Okay, thanks so much, Andrew, and again, great job, Bowie, Ivan, for bringing Wild Summit back to Hong Kong. Again, you guys are one of the few earlier ones to help us today to have the accomplishments that we have today. Now, in the interest of time, I just want to give you a quick, I would say, walkthrough about where we see the money flows. Because again, my colleague Elizabeth at SFC, they have done a fabulous job in creating environments to attract all the investments, all the great companies, all the talents come to Hong Kong. And for us at Invest Hong Kong, we work very closely with policymakers and regulators to try to make sure that all these companies can settle down in Hong Kong in a much smoother way. Now, so the three major flow of capital, or where the money is as follows. Now, first of all, I think as many of you in the know are already aware, is that because of the Hong Kong International Financial Center status, we inevitably have a lot of activities around financial products. Now, and by that, I'm referring to the RWA, the tokenization of funds, tokenization of all kinds of assets. This is really going gangbusters. A lot of all kinds of assets are being experimented. So a lot of activities are already happening over the past few years. Now, of course, I think when we talk about crypto and digital assets, of course, we look at the intersection between the crypto world, the OGs, and the traditional, the TradFi world. And that intersection actually took place in a big way last year. And what I mean by that is that obviously when Hong Kong has been having all kinds of leading crypto exchanges throughout the past 8, 10 years, there have been a very strong base of organic, I would say, the OGs in Hong Kong already. Now, and these folks have been working in the sort of crypto native world. Now, but then, in order of getting this to a much bigger pie, we need to get the TradFi money in, or the private investors in, so-called the old money. And this is what happened last year, when HMA stepped forward in championing a project called Project Ensemble, that I think many of you might have heard of. And this is essentially a project that put a stamp of approval, where digital assets officially met TradFi. Now, of course, fast forward, now we are having all kinds of assets being tokenized and now available on chain. Now, the primary sale, from what I understand, they're doing well. Now, what's missing is a secondary trading. So we still have some work to be done in order to have more secondary trading. But the first flow of capital is, again, inevitably very financial driven, financial products. Now, but the second thing that we see enormous amounts of interest is, of course, if you follow the news, you probably won't miss the word stablecoins in the past 6 months, which is for good reasons. Because obviously, when you look at all these assets being traded on-chain, you have to have something to pay for it smoothly on-chain. So that's why you need digital money. Of course, you have the CBDC, your stablecoins, but because of the financial, I think, education, where the crypto world already educated many people in using stablecoins in the name of USDC, USDT, stablecoins seems to be getting a much more commercial traction. So that's why in Hong Kong, of course, we would like to further promote that. Now, and at this moment, a lot of people have been talking about the role that Hong Kong plays when it comes to stablecoins. Now, of course, I think the regulation is already announced. Some companies are already queuing up to apply for the license. But then if you talk to enough of the industry players, from the, maybe the banks, maybe some of the, I would say, tech players, or even some of the industry Goliaths in various supply chains, there have been so much interest in this space. Now, the reason is very simple, because China, being the world factory, there's been so much trade, like trillions of trade going on cross-border. So besides the financial transactions, even facilitating traditional cross-border payment in and of itself is like multi-trillion-dollar opportunities. Just think about all these trade between China via Hong Kong with Africa. Now, Africa, from what we heard from talking to players in that space, they're paying something like 10% on average for every transaction being made, and they're the weights. Now, this is something that is not very sexy, but this is very real. So that's why we see that when the licenses are given out, when more players are now offering the regulated stablecoins, this will not only facilitate the tokenized assets I just mentioned, all these financial products, but also helping a lot of cross-border transactions in the real economy. So this is super exciting. And again, the impact is enormous. Now, I think before I talk about the third thing, I just want to briefly touch on when these two parts marry together, who are really the target audience? As I just said, the TradFi. Who exactly they are? These are the high net worth individuals. These are the family offices in which they're now allocating some capital to try to something new. And then the question is, why? Right? Well, are they really trying to sort of gamble to get like a higher return? The short answer is no. Actually, the motivation is something that actually, before we talk to all these family offices, we didn't really know the main motivation. The motivation is actually very simple. It's about diversification. Now, I think if we sort of dial back 3 years ago, when we talk about all these once in a probably generation kind of market correction, where equities and bonds both corrected massively. So just think about the traditional 60-40 portfolio, right? So that portfolio no longer worked, and a lot of people lost a lot of money in the year 2022. So since that year onwards, actually, quite a lot of people, I mean, I'm talking about the people with resources, the private investors, the high net worths, the family offices, and so on. They're like, you know what? We want to invest into something that's a low correlation against the traditional equities and bonds. So where do they go to? Well, they go to alternative assets. And by that, I'm talking about the one area that a lot of people are very interested is the infrastructure kind of projects being tokenized. Now, think about all this new infrastructure, right? It can be, the ports. I mean, I'm talking about the traditional ones. The ports, the roads, right? I mean, all these toll roads and whatnot, right? There's also the second generation, the new generation of infrastructure. What are they? Well, how about AI, right? The AI data centers. How about the EV charging stations? Now, a lot of these, maybe the green hydrogen production plants. Now, all these investments, you're talking about like, hundreds of millions and billions of dollar investments. Traditionally, only the institutional investors, the big banks, maybe the governments can afford to support this. But because of the enormous amount, how much? Actually, there was this letter by Mr. Larry Fink, the chairman of BlackRock. I think it was something published under the name of Chairman's letter in Q1 of this year. You can easily Google that letter. It's a very nicely written letter. Now, what Mr. Larry Fink articulated in that letter is as follows. Now, by the way, all these infrastructure investments added up all together, we're talking about, if I remember correctly, 68 trillion US dollar. It's enormous. How can even the banks and the governments can support it? Particularly, sad to say, after COVID, a lot of governments are in financial stress, right? So you can no longer rely on the traditional means to fund all these projects. Now, but today, now that we have the fractionalization, tokenization is basically another way of fractionalizing these kind of investments into smaller chunks. Then you can tap into the private investor pool, which traditionally they almost never, right, put money in a meaningful way in infrastructure projects. Again, the AI data centers, the EV charging stations, that type, right? But now we're talking about, again, hundreds of trillions of dollars of private capital now being accessible with the tokenization and so on. So this is super exciting. Now, and why would this be able to diversify the risk? Again, it's very simple, because think about it. Let's just say AI data centers. Well, probably it's going to be in good business for a long time, right? People have to pay for the GPUs and processing power and so on. So this is relatively steady income. Great, right? You invest, yes, but then the investment is great. However, the return is very steady over a long period of time. And also, the correlation against the stock market and the bond market is quite low. Great idea, right? So this is really where we're going, in which Hong Kong, as you may know, we are also a major green finance center. So we, of course, would like to deploy more green capital in the form of, for instance, a tokenized green bond. Hong Kong is the first government in the world in issuing green bonds, but in tokenized formats, because we see this trend coming, this $68 trillion of opportunities. So exciting. Now, so the third and final piece I want to update you about the money flow that we observed is, of course, in AI. And by that, I want to talk about the financial sector in Hong Kong. They've been amazing. Now, of course, a lot of people, well, when you ask around, just randomly, right? Oh, which is the city around the world that is a tech-leading city? Well, I think Hong Kong, finance leading city, of course, Hong Kong is top 3. But tech leading, sometimes this is not top of mind. But interestingly, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, there was this organization in UK called Finastra. And they've conducted a global survey across all the major international financial centers, the usual suspects, right? The New York, the London, the Zurich, the Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo, and so on. They were trying to figure out, among the major financial centers, which are the cities that have the most adoption of AI. Now, and guess what? Hong Kong was ranked #1 in the whole world across all the financial centers. When we saw the results, we were like, wow, okay, how did that happen, right? And then we started talking to the banks, we talked to the insurers and so on, and then we figured this out. Actually, in Hong Kong, actually quietly, now of course the banks are doing that all along anyway, but actually the wild card, if you will, is actually the insurance sector, believe it or not. Now, I won't name names, but one of the insurance companies in Hong Kong, I mean, I'm just talking about Hong Kong, not even Asia Pacific. I think it was last year. They have done over 100 AI POCs to try to test things out. Of course, some of them develop in-house, but most of them, they use some external help. So massive adoption, quietly. So basically, our regulator, the other regulator, Insurance Authority, they just launched a new program called the AI Cohort Program, literally just a month ago, in a way to essentially encourage even more insurance companies to deploy more capital in trying now investing into AI. Now, and you may ask, so why the insurance companies, but not the banks or the other, let's say the hedge funds and so on? They're putting so much energy. Now, part of it is because in the insurance world, it's not sometimes the use cases are not directly related to the customers. There may be some AI and enabling the insurance agents in serving the clients better. So there's one extra layer of protection, so to speak. But at the same time, you can raise productivity. Now, in case you wonder, but how can you apply AI to help the insurance agents? Well, very simple. Now, that insurance company that I talked to, one of the use cases was about using some kind of LLM model to help the insurance agents to figure out what kind of documents they need to help serve the clients. And I say, wow, weren't they trained to learn all about this, the claims and the whatever fact sheets and whatnot? But you'll be surprised. This insurance company, again, I'm talking about just Hong Kong alone. They've done this internal study. Each insurance agent, they have to basically touch on over 10,000 documents. I said, wow, you're kidding me. 10,000 documents. It's crazy, right? So essentially, no single human being can remember, right, which document to use for which circumstances. This is where the LLM comes in. And the insurance company is actually leading the way, believe it or not. So the reason why I bring this up is because, yes, the crypto, tokenization, super exciting, but at the same time, the TradFi folks are now also joining the forces in really pushing the technology envelopes for Hong Kong. So in summary, I think we are just so grateful. There have been so many organizations, again, like Wow Summit, like Ivan and Bowie, for, in a way, helping us to have a platform to attract more smart people, smart companies from Hong Kong. So now, after a few years, we are now seeing the fruition, a lot of the realization of the potential that Hong Kong offers because of our strong financial sector and now permeating into other sectors, funding all kinds of projects. It can be in gaming, it can be entertainment, digital arts, in other areas like health tech and whatnot. So this is like super exciting. So with that, I just want to wish the Wow Summit a big success, and I hope that the information I just shared with you can be useful to you. Thank you so much.